Live from Washington, D.C., this is Balance of Power with Joe Mathieu and Kailey Leinz.
Counting down to the Fed against the backdrop of war. Welcome to the Wednesday edition, 1 hour from the announcement on interest rates. I'm Joe Mathieu alongside Kailey Leinz in Washington. Kailey, we're waiting for this news as Iran now threatens to target energy assets in the Middle East. Of course, after Israel did the same, hitting Iran's South Pars gas field. This is why we're seeing crude oil on fire today.
Yeah, well above triple digits on Brent. We're now about $108 a barrel. And of course, when we look at what the Fed is going to be looking at as they make their decision today, we saw producer price inflation already this morning, hotter than expected. And that was before you saw what's happening in energy. So the question is going to be how this energy supply shock filters through into wider inflation. And frankly, is a central bank poised to do anything about it from a monetary policy perspective? Absolutely. Can policy respond to it at all? The administration certainly is trying, as President Trump is now waiving, at least temporarily, the Jones Act.
That's correct. And also calling out the chair while he's at it, asking on Truth Social, when is too late Powell lowering interest rates? Apparently it's not going to be today, Kailey, and that's going to make for an interesting news conference. We just saw Michael McKee making his way over to Fed headquarters, and he's got his questions handy as well.
Yeah, of course, Chairman Powell's not going to have to answer those kind of questions in this particular forum, at least for much longer, knowing his term is about to expire. But it's still unclear as whether Kevin Warsh is going to be able to be confirmed for the job, as Senator Tom Tillis is still willing to hold things up in that chamber over the investigation into Chairman Powell.
Good thing nothing complicated going on here. It does, of course, bring us back to the fact that gas prices keep rising. It's not just crude oil in the futures market here. We're looking at a national average above $3.80. It's $3.86 in Michigan, where J.D. Vance is today talking affordability, and where, of course, Congresswoman Haley Stevens is from. We're going to be talking with the Democrat in just a moment here on Bloomberg.
Yep, that's coming up shortly. But let's begin with a check on those oil, gas prices, everything else across the board as we turn to Charlie Pellet with the markets up in New York. Hey, Charlie.
Thank you very much. Indeed, 59 minutes to go until we get the latest Fed decision. Jay Powell's news conference, 2:30 p.m. Wall Street time. As you both mentioned, officials widely expected to hold rates steady. Oil, a major story. West Texas Intermediate crude now up 2.2%, $98.30 a barrel. Brent, $108.83, up 5.2%. Crude is rallying after Iran said some of its energy facilities had come under attack and is also threatening retaliation on oil and gas facilities in neighboring countries. Iran has listed energy assets in the region that it will target in response to a U.S. and Israeli attack on its upstream industry. Right now, the S&P is down 47, a drop there of 0.7%. We do have the Dow down 0.9%. The Nasdaq Composite Index down 188 for Nasdaq, a drop there of 0.8%. The VIX at 23, the 10-year ahead of the Fed decision, 4.22%, and the 2-year 3.71%. A retreat for gold amidst all of this, down 2.4%, 48.85 the ounce, but crude WTI 98.29 a barrel right now, up 2.2%. Brent up 5%, 108.84. Oil majors pushing higher. ExxonMobil up 0.5%. Chevron up 1.3%. ConocoPhillips up by 1%. For on-demand news 24 hours a day, subscribe to Bloomberg News Now wherever you get your podcasts. Back we go to Washington, and once again, your hosts, Joe Mathieu and Kailey Leinz.
All right, Charlie Pellet, thank you so much. Watching the markets for us as they wait with bated breath for maybe not the Federal Reserve decision, but certainly the news conference that follows and how Chairman Powell is going to speak around the potential inflationary shock that could be emanating from the Middle East as the war with Iran is now in day 19. The Strait of Hormuz still effectively closed, and therefore global energy markets, at least about a fifth of that global energy trade, is at somewhat of a standstill. Of course, much of what happens next will depend on how long this war continues, what the time horizon is. I'm sure we'll hear something similar from Chairman Powell this afternoon. And on that time horizon, President Trump has repeatedly suggested it could be a matter of weeks, but the U.S. is ahead of schedule. He again said so just yesterday.
We did a little excursion, and we're way ahead of schedule, as you probably noticed. And we've had, we knocked out their Navy, their Air Force, their anti-aircraft equipment, their radar, and their leaders. It's been amazing militarily, but it's something that had to be done.
The president speaking at the White House yesterday. He's now wheels up to Dover, as we have been mentioning, the President of the United States on his way to Dover to witness the dignified transfer of 6 Americans who lost their lives in a tanker crash, a KC-135 air-to-air refueler that went down over western Iraq last week. We bring in the voice of Congresswoman Haley Stevens, the Democrat from Michigan, is with us here. Michigan's 11th and a candidate for U.S. Senate. Congresswoman, it's great to see you. Welcome back to Bloomberg TV and radio. Just for starters, because we haven't had a chance to compare notes with you in some time, this excursion, as the president describes it, is something you support?
No, it's a war that he started on his own. Michiganders don't want this. They're paying for it. We have 200 injured. It's hitting us at the gas pump. It's hitting us in our pocketbooks. And it's something that the president began without the consultation of the American people and certainly of Congress. So I voted for war powers, and I continue to stand with the Michiganders who want something much better than what they're getting from this administration right now.
Well, of course, the administration, while it didn't ask for authorization for these combat operations, Congresswoman, may still yet come to you and your colleagues with a supplemental funding request in order to keep paying for these operations. Now, I'm not sure whether, given what you just said, you would be supportive of a supplemental, but if the alternative Republicans could pursue is budget reconciliation, a package that could theoretically include far more than just funding for the war with Iran, is that potentially a worst case scenario?
Well, I'll tell you who they're going to come to for funding. They're going to come to Michiganders who, $1 billion a day that is costing us. They're cutting food assistance, health care, education programs. We've dealt with reckless and chaotic tariffs that have threatened our manufacturing sector. Our economy has been rocked as a result of this. And now, those gas prices that are coming down on Michiganders who are just trying to get to their job, to pick up their kids from school, go to the store and get what they need to get, it's just another strangulation. It's not acceptable. It's not working for us. This is an overreach. There's no plan. There's no strategy. And I'm not going to go along with it.
Congresswoman, not mincing words today, as the average price for gasoline hits $3.86. It's almost $3.87 in the state of Michigan specifically, which, by the way, is slightly above the national average. Congresswoman, you sit on the China Select Committee, which steers our conversations pretty frequently when we talk here on Bloomberg. It's been suggested that China, if not Russia, but China, is the biggest winner from this action right now. Do you agree?
Well, we certainly see our allies going to our adversaries for energy. We've got this challenge with the Strait of Hormuz, as you've just mentioned, our own energy considerations now being challenged. And I want the world to see what we do in Michigan. That's where I'm always going to stand. We've got, the vice president bopping around my district today, going to a manufacturing shop. I've spent years, being with these manufacturers, advocating for them at the lawmaking table, and we've got to win the race against China from the place that I call home. But that race is not going to be won if we're pushing our allies into the arms of, the adversaries here, particularly on the energy costs and on trade. And so I've got a lot of concerns. I also have got plans. I've got bills that I've helped pass and bills to come on lessening our dependence on China for our supply chain, lowering costs, creating jobs. We've done that on chips. I want to do that for critical minerals. I want to secure our supply chain from the place that I'm so proud to call home. We're the best manufacturing economy in the world, and our state needs a champion. That's what I'm advocating for each and every single day here.
Well, you mentioned that the vice president is in your state of Michigan today. His remarks have concluded, but in part, he says, and this is a quote, "In November, it's going to be very simple. Do we support the people who made us hundreds and hundreds of dollars richer, or the people who made us hundreds and hundreds of dollars poorer?" Referencing in part this administration's efforts on taxes, as tax returns are larger at least at this point on average, than they were prior to the big, beautiful bill being passed. What do you say to a Michigander who does have more money coming into their wallet in that regard right now? Should they not be glad that that policy exists?
Look, I'm going to tell you something. This administration is one big grift. They're the ones getting rich. They're the ones profiting off of cuts to programs that, benefit so many Michiganders. To the fully paralyzed veteran who reached out to me last year asking if he was still going to get his benefit check because of Elon Musk prancing around a stage with a chainsaw. I just authored a bill called Stop Enrichment in the Congress. People here, we got to stop the stock trading in the House of Representatives, the Senate, and also in the executive office. And that's what my bill does. No sitting on corporate boards. Stop the grift here. And so we're all paying that price. I want to see tax fairness. It needs to go further for working Michiganders. They need more money in their pocketbook, not to continue to pay at a higher marginal rate than the corporations or in some cases the billionaires.
Congresswoman, you mentioned J.D. Vance. He is in your backyard today. Auburn Hills at a company called Engineering Design Services, which is involved in robotics, engineering, and design. This is something that the administration, this type of technology, has tried to harness, and it's something that you've been involved with as well, with your background in the auto sector going back to the Obama administration. I'm old enough to remember this. I wonder what your advice would be for J.D. Vance when he speaks to the workers at Engineering Design Services, what he should know about Auburn Hills today.
Yeah, well, look, the voice of our manufacturers and our manufacturing workers needs to be heard at the lawmaking table. We've got to ask in terms of what they're paying for erratic tariffs, what they have paid, what that's cost them, what policies need to come into place to secure our state and our workers to go and win the future. I've spent a ton of time in Auburn Hills visiting manufacturers from FEV to Borg Warner and on. People who were standing up during the COVID crisis to meet our supply chain disruptions and considerations, to make sure that Michiganders got masks and ventilators. There's so much incredible innovation going on in Auburn Hills, Michigan. And of course, what's going on with Canada? Is J.D. Vance going to say that we're going to open up that bridge, the Gordie Howe, that President Trump is shuttering? Because that impacts us too. That impacts trade. We've got in my congressional district, the second busiest airport in Michigan because of the freight that just goes on, between our trade partners. And yet those relationships have been diminished and impacted by some of these policies. So yeah, listen to our manufacturers and then do something.
All right, Congresswoman, thank you so much for joining us. Democratic Congresswoman Haley Stevens of Michigan, of course, also a Senate candidate for Michigan. Thank you for being here on Bloomberg TV and radio. And we want to play this conversation now to our political panel who is joining us. Bloomberg Politics contributors Rick Davis and Jeanne Zaino. Rick, Stonecourt Capital Partner and Republican strategist. Jeanne, our Democratic analyst and senior democracy visiting fellow at Harvard Kennedy School's Ash Center. As we talk about J.D. Vance's affordability messaging, which the Congresswoman was just talking about, Rick, it's also worth pointing out that he did face questions in Michigan today about the war in Iran, what they're doing, what it is doing to gas prices, also about the resignation of Joe Kent, who until yesterday was the counterterrorism chief. Vance said, this is a quote, "Nobody likes war. I guarantee the president of the United States is not interested in getting us into the kind of long-term quagmires that we've seen in years past." It seems, Rick, that he's just trying to cast this as this is a different president, which is why I feel differently about something like this compared to how I always have historically. Is he doing a good enough job walking the line here?
I don't know if he's doing a good enough job walking the line. There's a pretty big split in MAGA over the incursion into Iran, and I know it's got to be difficult for him to try to please both the non-interventionists with those who are much more muscular on foreign policy. He's going to lose that fight. There's no such thing as being both. And I'd say he's probably already pretty well defined as someone who was very much in the America First line and has now sort of sacrificed that, which will weaken his prospects in the future if he plans to run for national office. again. So I do think it's a political problem for J.D. Vance.
I don't know what Joe Kent is thinking about this right now, Jeanne, but a day after his resignation over the war in Iran, suggesting that there was no imminent threat. This is the head of our counter-terror agency. He's going to be on the Tucker Carlson program later on today. To what extent could he further exacerbate this divide within MAGA?
Oh, I think he's going to underscore it. And, you know, Joe and Kailey, I was listening, and I know you guys were, to the hearing going on today with Tulsi Gabbard. What a day on Capitol Hill for hearings. And one of the big questions that she was asked repeatedly had to do with this question of an imminent threat, because, of course, the intelligence community's assessment was that Iran did not pose an imminent threat. She was asked repeatedly to confirm that, because, of course, the president is saying they did. And she said that it is up to the president to determine what is an imminent threat and what isn't. And so this question, one also Carolyn Leavitt has been asked repeatedly about what is an imminent threat, what is not. Is it up to the president to determine that? That is all the rage. And of course, as Rick was just talking about, it has split the MAGA base terribly. And Joe Kent, Megyn Kelly, Joe Rogan, I mean, the list goes on and on. Certainly Tucker Carlson are taking one side of this. And this is starting to look a little bit like the sort of fall off we found with George Bush.
Well, and it's incredible as we consider Gabbard's spoken testimony. She actually omitted something that was included in her written opening statement. She was going to say Iran's nuclear enrichment program was obliterated in Operation Midnight Hammer back last June, and that there, quote, has been no effort since then to try to rebuild their enrichment capability. But she did not say that out loud ultimately in her opening statement. Rick, what do you make of that?
Well, I mean, she would have been contradicting the president of the United States, who made a point that part of the concerns they had was that the Iranians could reproduce their enrichment program and come out with a potential bomb, nuclear bomb, sometime in the very near future, which has helped precipitate the attack on Iran. I would say, just as a point on this MAGA split, even though there is a fight in MAGA over this, it has not actually inured to the weakness of the president. He is still getting 90% of Republican support for his efforts in Iran. And so even though there is this fight at a sort of policy level, if you want to call it that, it hasn't risen to the political level yet.
Wow. How come that is, Rick? What do you make of that? And could that change if, you know, this becomes a weeks, if not months-long endeavor and oil prices keep rising?
I mean, the reality from my perspective is Donald Trump is seen as a powerful, you know, aggressive fighter. And these characteristics are what the MAGA Republican Party like about him. They're much less concerned about specific issues. And if President Trump says we're going to take a U-turn and go in a different direction, I believe at least for a while, he'll have the command of that party behind him. The question is, and this is, I guess, the point that J.D. Vance was trying to make, is how long is that patience going to last and when does it run out? Because I think that's on the question of everybody's lips right now. What are we in for here?
What are we in for here? Great question that we will keep asking with the help of our panel. Thanks to both of you. Bloomberg Politics contributors Rick Davis and Jeanne Zaino, our great panel on Balance of Power. As we count down to the Fed, but we will have more on Iran coming up here on Bloomberg TV and radio as Clayton Seigle from CSIS joins us with the latest from the Strait of Hormuz, which largely remains closed. WTI West Texas Intermediate ever closer to triple digits. This is Bloomberg. The Fed, our special coverage begins less than 10 minutes from now. I'm Joe Mathieu alongside Kailey Leinz here in Washington with our eyes on Iran, more specifically the Strait of Hormuz, which remains largely closed, save for a couple of vessels that managed to get through over the past couple of days. And that is why we're seeing West Texas Intermediate closer to 100 and Brent closer to 109 this afternoon. We heard about this earlier today on Bloomberg TV and radio in conversation with Jeff Curry, Chief Strategy Officer of Energy Pathways at Carlyle. Here's his take.
The type of oil consumption that's left in the global economy is critical. And so if you pull those barrels out of the system, the rippling effect or the cascading effect through global supply chains is going to be significant. You go from gas to urea, urea to fertilizers, fertilizers to the dinner table.
And to our table here in Washington with Clayton Seigle, who's Senior Fellow at the Center for Strategic and International Studies. We have the voice of another expert. Clayton, it's great to see you, and welcome back to Bloomberg TV and radio. We're talking weeks, maybe months. How much worse could this get?
Well, it could get considerably worse. The oil market is always trying to price both the duration and the volume of a disruption. And for the past almost, let's say several weeks, we've seen almost no oil and gas cargoes coming out of the Gulf. As you said, Iran is playing a bit of a gatekeeper function right now, deciding which of a few handfuls of ships have been able to get out, maybe get to China with some oil. But for the most part, the Gulf is still paralyzed to oil and gas traffic.
Well, and of course, the traffic is one thing, but there's also the question of the actual infrastructure that produces it in the first place. And Iran is now declaring that that infrastructure is fair game to be targeted, actually sending out a list of targets that could be aimed at for retaliation for Israel striking its South Pars gas field. This kind of escalation, is this the worst case scenario for the global energy market?
It really is among them, Kailey. We looked at some scenarios like this for escalation before the war started, and one of them was about the two sides not just blocking each other's exports and shipping, but actually destroying offshore facilities and even onshore facilities that could take a really long time to repair and keep this supply offline for longer. And then you start to get to pricing in the oil market that's really around demand curtailment. And I think back to 2022 when the national average price of gasoline in the United States hit a record $5 per gallon. I hope we're not heading in that direction, but there are signs that we may be, especially in Asia in the physical market. That's different than what we see on the ticker here where it's only around 100. Up there, refined product prices are closer to 200 in some cases.
Wow. Well, you know, the administration's playing all the greatest hits when you get into this territory. We've already had a release approved from the SPR. President today waiving the Jones Act, which is something that we saw coming. It allows foreign flag vessels to carry goods between U.S. ports, and it gives a 60-day window. Will that make any difference?
By itself in isolation, it might not make that much of a difference in terms of pump prices. It allows the Gulf Coast to supply the East Coast a little bit more easily and at slightly lower cost to the midstream companies. But it's not really going to put a dent in $4 a gallon gasoline, $5 a gallon gasoline if that's where we're headed. To do that, you really need those supplies, which are critical for world demand, to be resumed from the Middle East Gulf. There's really no substitute. And all of these policy accommodations that we're talking about here in town can really just buy us more time to get to that ultimate outcome.
Okay, so basically there is no policy fix for this particular problem, despite what the administration might wish. So what does that mean as we're now half an hour or so away from a Fed decision about what the monetary response is likely to be? As you talk about the idea that you need demand destruction come in, can higher interest rates fix the supply shortage problem realistically?
I don't think so, Kailey. I think that in this environment, the number one concern is a return of general inflation. And we've fought a lot of battles in recent years to tame inflation. Monetary policy is a huge part of that. And the question now is, does the Fed have room to further cut rates if we're worried about a resurgence in inflation that comes not only from the direct effects of higher oil prices, but Joe, as you said before the segment, the cascading effects through the economy, which go to agriculture, they go to the paralyzed nature of shipping around the world and not enough capacity to move stuff around. All of this is macroeconomic risk.
Even helium is being held up, which doesn't have to do with party balloons, but in fact the creation of high-end AI chips is being used to cool these data centers. It's amazing how many tentacles there are coming out of the Strait of Hormuz. The president likes to talk about the pipes. He says, I call them the pipes. He's referring to the gas pipelines on Karg Island, which he chose not to bomb when we struck Karg Island a couple of days ago. What would happen if we did?
Well, in the scenarios we looked at, there's three levers that we could play with Karg Island, which is so important because that's where the Iranian crude exports originate. We could destroy it, but as the president pointed out, that would really be doing a disservice to the Iranian people. We're supposed to be going in to rescue them, help them with the future after this regime. We could try seizing it. We could land troops on Karg Island and get our hands on the spigot, but our troops could come under fire there. I think that they that's a big risk to consider. I think that we could accomplish what we want to do if we repeat the success story from Venezuela, a naval quarantine that blocks ships carrying Iranian oil from getting to market. That would maybe level the playing field a little bit with Tehran at less risk to our servicemen and women.
If we hadn't gone into Venezuela and have the accessibility of that oil now in the global market, how much worse could this have been? What difference really is it making?
I'm afraid to say it's not making a difference at all. The extra oil from Venezuela is maybe just a couple 100,000 barrels per day. There's still around 1 million barrels per day in a 100 million barrel per day market. Yeah. It's a drop in the bucket compared to missing 10 or 15 million barrels a day from the Gulf.
Interesting. The idea of committing troops, or special ops commandos, whatever we call them, to a place like Karg Island, or, for instance, to seize the enriched uranium that we've still not located. Would that be a market-moving headline to the extent that we're seeing now? Would we see further gains in oil on such a thing that many folks think is inevitable?
Well, we have a split market right now between futures, which are generally sanguine about risk, and the physical market, which is getting ready for shortages. So I think we would see price effects in both markets, and they would read it in the way that they want to read it to validate their position. So I think some people on the futures market may say, hey, it's almost over now that the U.S. is intervening on the ground. But in the physical market, they'd be worried about those supplies.
Well, as we consider that the U.S. is considering at least sending even more personnel and assets in, the president has also asked the same of allies like Europeans, who he argues, and he's right, are more exposed to this particular energy story. If you're Europe, already cut off from Russian natural gas by and large, you now have a major problem if you also can't get LNG and the like out of the Middle East. Knowing that European central banks have decisions to make this week, the ECB and the BOE on deck tomorrow. How much worse is this going to be for Europe in particular when it comes to the energy story?
It will be worse for Europe in certain fuels markets, like the middle distillate grouping, which is things like diesel, close to jet fuel. You know, Europe will have problems supplying if there's a real outage, but the number one region for concern of running shortages by far is Asia. Japan gets 78% of their supplies from the Gulf, South Korea 62%, and China, which needs 11 million barrels per day to run the show, gets about half from the Gulf. The overarching problem here is that Iran basically now controls not just the Strait of Hormuz, so we don't want to over-index there, but the whole Middle East Gulf. Until that situation changes, we are at risk of real supply shortage.
$5 diesel was a big headline yesterday. The fact that it's used for so much global shipping. What would continued increases in diesel mean for not just the energy market, but the global economy?
That's what we worry about in terms of the transference into the macroeconomic story and GDP. Because if it costs more, so diesel is the fuel of the 18-wheeler. It takes everything that we buy from market or port to stores and ultimately our doorsteps. And if they have to start working in higher prices for deliveries and transportation, prices for everything are going to go up.
All right, Clayton Seigle, Senior Fellow at the Center for Strategic and International Studies. Thank you so much. Prices for everything going up, exactly what the Federal Reserve does not want to be hearing or considering right now, is they're still above their inflation target. And
Chair Powell probably will hear that when reporters start asking questions. We'll have the decision for you at 2 o'clock, the news conference that follows, and special coverage that starts just moments from now. Alongside Kailey, Leinz, I'm Joe Mathieu in Washington. We'll meet you on the late edition of Balance of Power here on Bloomberg.